The clean is the first movement of the second event in a weightlifting competition. In this context, it will be followed by a jerk in order to secure your total and be ranked in that competition. The movement revolves around getting the bar from the floor to the shoulder in one motion. When compared to the snatch, all that this does is reduce the maximum height that we need to achieve in order to catch the weight. This in turn reduces the complexity of the movement, and it allows us to lift considerably more weight. It is a much more brute force movement when compared to the snatch, but it still requires a great deal of technique in order to execute well. Not to mention a great degree of confidence in order to jam yourself under these falling weights, because the weights do get big. This is why it is very important to learn to execute the movement well in order to avoid the classic CrossFit conundrum of power cleaning more than you can actually clean. As in the previous videos, let's clear up some confusion first. When I say clean, I do mean a full clean with a squat. Saying squat clean is redundant. I would have to specify a power clean for you to have to catch it anywhere above or at parallel. Also, parallel is considered to be the angle that the top of your thigh has as it compares to the floor. Additionally, you can have variations to these movements, so a hang clean is still a full clean. You just started from the hang position. I have to specify hang power clean for you to have to skip the squat. So let's dive into the technique. Just like in the previous videos, this video is going to be divided into three parts: the setup on the first pull and the second and third pull. So let's dive into it. So the first thing would be to determine your grip. Make sure you can comfortably hold on to the front rack position with at least a couple of fingers under the bar. It is okay if you cannot keep a full grip with the bar resting on your shoulders. A lot of us will never be able to do so, and most of us will end up going to fingers anyways during the turnover. Now, if you cannot comfortably achieve any of these positions, you're probably dealing with some mobility restrictions. For most people, it will be their lats or in their thoracic spine, and you should work towards addressing those first. Make sure you are always using a hook grip. This is a non-negotiable, and there should not be any arguments to this. I don't really care how strong your grip is, because it's not about whether or not you can hold onto the bar. Even if your grip is insanely good, whenever you're holding onto something heavy, you will carry tension in your arms, and this tension will be counterproductive to the movement itself. So use a hook grip. Set up with your feet slightly turned out. I do recommend you turn them out slightly, as this will help you get your knees out of the way and more effectively engage your glutes. This is more true for longer-legged athletes, but I think it's a good practice for everyone. If you try it and truly find that keeping your toes straight is better for you, then by all means, go ahead with that. In the setup, we want to work to bring our hips down. Unlike in the deadlift, the Olympic lifts are leg-driven movements, not so much hinging movements. So we need to work to keep our hips relatively low. Shorter athletes, and especially shorter limb athletes, will have an easier time with this, and may even bring their hips below the knee. But all athletes should work to keep the hips in line with the knees, or maybe just slightly above the knees in the initial setup. The shoulders should be above the bar, maybe slightly over it. Keep your head up and the eyes forward, and it is perfectly okay for the knees to be over the bar. The elbows should be pointing slightly out, and the shoulders should be slightly internally rotated. Your upper back should be engaged, but in a neutral position, with the shoulder blades just slightly depressed to help create tension in the lats. Now, with the correct start position, we can begin the first pull, which is all about staying in position. Initiate the movement by pushing hard with your legs against the ground through the whole foot. Work to stay in position, maintaining the same back angle and staying over the bar all the way to the knee. The bar should move straight up or even slightly in. I don't recommend actively working to get your knees back. If you keep clipping your knees, try adjusting your stance, going wider, pushing the knees out more. Yes, most of the best lifters will have a tendency to keep the shins straight in this part of the lift, but it's just something that they do because of proportions and just overall better technique. More often than not, there's other things you can do first before you start trying to move the knees back. Just keep that in mind. Once we pass the knee, we begin the second pull, which is the most tricky section of the lift. The goal here is to effectively get from the knee to the power position. While the first pull is about forcefully staying in position, the second one is more about flow. We need to understand that lifts are meant to be vertical movements, meaning that we need to move up, not back. We are not trying to bang the bar off our legs or hips, but rather we're trying to scoop it up and bring ourselves under it. So here you must focus on moving upwards and keeping the bar as close to your body as possible. If you do this correctly, you will go through what is referred to as a double knee bend or double knee scoop. You do not do this intentionally. There will be some differences in the degree of flexion of this second knee bend. Usually athletes who are more hip dominant and have more powerful hips will have a greater knee bend. Meanwhile, athletes that rely more on leg drive will tend to be more upright. For more on this is a fantastic video by Catalyst Athletics that I'll link below, but in summary, he says that you need to think about this the same way you would think about a jump. And if you start a jump from what we consider the power positions, you will see that your knees will naturally just travel forward. It is extremely important to remain calm and stay over the bar for as long as possible. Oftentimes, when the weights feel heavy, we tend to rush into extension because we want to get under the bar quickly. But when we bring the shoulders back early, we push the hips forward early, and this in turn kicks the bar out further and just ruins the whole lift. This is hard and it takes time to master. Just stay patient and stick with it. And don't be discouraged when heavy weights feel heavy. I know that sounds kind of stupid and silly for me to say, but people do tend to worry why PRs are not getting easier. Like, of course they're not gonna get easier. You're lifting heavier weights. The weights will always be heavy. Every now and then you'll get that magical lift where everything clicks and everything feels light, but it doesn't come very often. So stick with it, stay patient, and don't rush. Next up is contact. Know that you need to make contact. The reason is this. If you were to stand upright with the bar in your hands, you would see that it would naturally sit against your thighs. Now compare this to the fact that in most lifts, you will be leaning slightly back. When you look at it from this perspective, the only reason why the bar is not touching you is because you're actively doing something to avoid it. Now, for the final pull, remember what we talked about earlier. The lifts are meant to be upward movements. So upon contact, the final extension or the triple extension needs to be as vertical as possible. A slight degree of backwards lean is completely normal, but it should start from the hips without any noticeable back arch. The key to an effective turnover and catch is understanding the role of the upper body. When we start the lift, our legs are exerting a downwards force, which helps us move up. But upon final extension, it is our upper body that needs to continue pulling the bar up. At this stage, our legs are no longer in contact with the ground, so the only thing left for us to use is our upper body. This accomplishes two things. First, it gives us some more time as we try to keep some upwards momentum on the bar. And second, it pulls us under the bar. This is where the speed factor comes from. It is our upper body that pulls us under the bar fast. You do not drop under the bar. You'll often hear coaches and athletes talk about staying connected to the bar. This is what they're talking about. In both the snatch and the clean, and even in the jerk, there should never be a time, with the exception of the split seconds in which your grip changes, in which you are not exerting some type of force against the bar. Because even after you catch it, you need to immediately start pushing against it once again. This will help you stabilize and secure the lift. Alright, and that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, got something useful out of it. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.
It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. If we take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale. Understanding others, the other elements, and the other nations will help you